So now, as part of our unit on quadratics, we're going to be looking at solving the quadratic equation in its standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. At this point now, when we come to solving quadratic equations, you'll not only be required to utilize the skills you've acquired in the quadratics unit, so that's things like factorizing monic quadratics or difference of perfect squares. It also involves a lot of your algebra skills that you've acquired up to this point now. One of the important things to remember is that you can also solve quadratic equations by using the null factor law. And each of the examples that we'll go through now all do require you to use the null factor law, but they will require you to also utilize some of the other algebra skills that you've learnt so far. So let's take a look at the first example. So we've been given the equation x squared minus 3x minus 4, and we're told that we need to find the values of x which allow this equation to equal 0. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to factorize the expression. Remember, we're trying to find terms that multiply to give us negative 4. So it could be negative 4 and positive 1. It could be negative 1 and positive 4. Or it could be negative 2 and 2. But now we need to find which one of these, when added together, give me an answer of negative 3. And straight away, I can see that negative 4 plus 1 will give me negative 3. So writing my linear factors now, so I'll just write factorize. I'm going to write x minus 4 times x plus 1 equals 0. So notice that we haven't changed anything about the equation except how it appears. So instead of it being expanded, we've factorized it. We haven't created a whole new equation or anything like that, and it's really important that you make sure that you have not changed or created a whole new equation. So now that we've factorized it, we're now going to apply null factor law. So we're going to do x minus 4 equals 0, and then we're going to have x plus 1 equals 0. So taking that negative 4 to the other side, I'm going to get x is equal to 0 plus 4, giving me an answer of x is equal to 4. Again, I can do something similar here, so I'm going to take that positive 1 to the other side, and I'm going to get x is equal to 0 minus 1, giving me an answer of x is equal to negative 1. And all this means now is that if I substitute x equals 4 into the equation will equal 0. Or I could substitute x is equal to negative 1 into the equation, and I will also get an answer of 0. As you're starting out, I definitely recommend that you do substitute the values just quickly off to the side or in a different color, just to make sure that you are doing it correctly and that you've solved the equation or the quadratic correctly. So I'll just do my check here off to the side, and let's check and see when x equals 4 what happens. So I'll just do it here. So I've got 4 squared minus 3 times 4 minus 4. So just follow along as I solve this. And we just found that substituting x equals 4 into the equation does give us an answer of 0. So now we know that that's correct. Let's check and see what happens when we substitute x equals negative 1. And again, what we've just seen here is that when x is equal to negative 1, we can also get an answer of 0, which proves that these are our two solutions to the following quadratic. So now let's look at the next example. So we've got x squared plus x equals 56. Right now it's not necessarily in a form that you're used to seeing, so I would highly suggest that you rearrange the equation so that it's in a form that you're comfortable solving. So if I'm going to rearrange it, what I'm suggesting you do is rearrange it so it takes on the general form. So that would mean that we would write x squared plus x, and we'd bring that 56 to the left-hand side, and we'd make the right-hand side equal 0. So that becomes negative 56 equals to 0. So now we're going to factorize. So we're looking for factors of negative 56. So they can include negative 7 and positive 8. We could have negative 8 and positive 7. We could have negative 14 and 4. And there are other possibilities. However, just to save on time, we can see that negative 7 plus 8 will add to give positive 1 because the coefficient of the x term is 1. So therefore my linear factors will look like the following. So be x minus 7 times x plus 8 equals 0. So now I'm going to apply null factor law. So that will mean that I have the following. So x minus 7 equals 0. So taking that negative 7 to the other side, and I'll get x is equal to positive 7. Or I could have x plus 8 equals 0, taking that positive 8 to the other side, and I get x is equal to negative 8. So at this point now, I would highly suggest that you pause the video and you substitute x equals 7 into the equation and check to see whether or not you get an answer of 56. Or substitute x equals negative 8 into the equation and see whether or not you get an answer of 56. Just as an option for you to check whether or not your answer is correct, we'll just check to see if x equals 7 is a solution. So I'm going to substitute it x equals 7 anywhere where x is. So that'll be 7 squared plus 7, which will give me 49 plus 7, which gives me an answer of 56. So we know for a fact that x equals 7 is a solution. And then last but not least, we have the following equation, 2x squared plus 6x plus 4 equals 0. Now this looks like a lot, and if you're trying to factorize it, I would definitely recommend, first of all, check to see whether or not you have any common factors. And looking at each of the coefficients or the constants, you can see here that the highest common factor is in fact 2. So the first thing I would do is take out a highest common factor. So I'd have 2x squared plus 3x plus 2. Remembering that you're going to divide every term in the equation by the highest common factor, and that'll be 0. So now what we can do is we can factorize the equation. So we're going to have 2 times. So again, we're looking for factors of 2 when multiplied together. When multiplied together will give us 2, but when those factors are added together, they'll give us positive 3. And if you're going to do this and practice it, definitely do all the working out that you need to, just to save on a bit of time. The answer is x plus 1 and x plus 2. So now what we've got here is we're going to again apply null factor law to find out whether or not our answer is correct. So we're going to do x plus 1 equals 0, and then x plus 2 is equal to 0. So x is equal to 0 minus 1, which means x is equal to negative 1. And then I'm going to take that positive 2 to the other side. So I'm going to have x is equal to 0 minus 2, giving me an answer of x is equal to negative 2. Now you may be wondering at this point what's happened to the highest common factor of 2. I should probably not circle that in the same color. So what I'm going to do here is, so this 2, I've technically divided this whole thing by 2, which means I'll divide that 0 by 2. Therefore, they would essentially cancel out, leaving me with an answer of just 0. So that's why, if you're wondering what's happened to the 2, that's essentially what's happened. And that's it for solving quadratic equations.